call the...
Recording in progress.
Thank you. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Middlebury Select Board for the 12th of May, 2026 to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additions, deletions, changes, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify. Aye.
Aye.
Fantastic. Next up is the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening includes select board meeting minutes from our last meeting, personnel committee meeting minutes, DRB meeting minutes, planning commission meeting minutes, infrastructure committee meeting minutes, state liquor licenses and entertainment permits, the check warrants, letter of support for the Rural Community Opioid Response Program, and the town manager's report.
I have a correction on the minutes.
Let's move it first.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Dan?
Corrections to the minutes on item 11. It says that when we came out of executive session, we appointed Andy Mitchell for the Downtown Improvement District Commission. We appointed him as an alternate for the Downtown Improvement District Commission.
What's the line item?
It's line number 336.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Very good. Any other item that we should pull for further discussion, changes to items as presented? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify.
Aye.
Aye. We've moved the consent agenda. Next up is citizen comments. This is the time for anyone who's here for an item which is not on our agenda to address the board. Yeah, come on up.
Hi, Ellen Cronin. Just wanted to make sure that the Middlebury Select Board is aware that the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Board is considering changing their regulations and adding bear baiting. So bear baiting will be allowed. Their next meeting is on May 20th. Not sure whether this has been widely reported. It hasn't been. And it would certainly affect us since we already have occasional bear problems. And if they're then brought into humans as opposed to being taught not to hang out with humans, then things would probably get worse.
Wow.
Just letting you know.
Okay.
Bear baiting is something people do to bring bears in to
You
hunt them,
have a bait pile.
and then
The
they.
bear is habituated to the bait pile, and then when hunting season opens, it will keep coming to the bait pile, but then you're allowed to kill it.
Got it. But it's not a trap. Then you shoot it.
Well,
It's not
it's a
trapping.
trap.
Well,
But I mean,
it's,
I'm
a,
just.
it's a behavior trap.
It's not
Yeah.
like
It
a.
is not, no, you just shoot it like you would normally shoot it.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted clarity on that.
Yeah, you've just changed its behavior and taught it that humans need food,
Yeah. Got it.
which we've been trying for decades to tell them humans don't need food.
Interesting. That's an interesting choice.
I think so.
Thank you.
Please, come on up, Victoria.
Victoria DeWin. I was looking at your last meeting just to see how you went on appointments, and I was curious about the decision not to appoint design advisory applicants. There were 3, and I'm just curious as to why this very valuable committee is not being filled. So just my past experience on the planning commission, it proved, well, it started at that time and it proved to be very helpful with large development proposals. So curious why you're not filling it.
Yeah, I think we wanted to have further discussion about it. It's been understaffed, even with the 2 additional applicants that we had, it wouldn't have been at its full. Yeah, we're going to address that more in the next 2 meetings. The approach of this town to design advisory, how that fits in with the DRB process.
with the expertise that we've had in the past, and I would hope going forward, it's going to be really helpful to the Planning Commission and the Design Development Review Committee. So I would encourage you to, if you've got 3 people wanting to serve, that's great. And someone even with more of landscaping, expertise is helpful too. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. No? All right, mom's the word. Dorothy?
My citizen comment is actually on the same topic, and I also had wondered why the appointments weren't being made. If they were made, it looks like you'd have 4 on the committee, and as the committee is right now, there's not a quorum, so it can't act. And I think that committee is appointed by an ordinance, and I wouldn't want it to seem like the select board is, well, why wouldn't the select board appoint to that committee? I guess I wonder that too. And what, my understanding is there'd be a conversation about the qualifications, but it's Jim Pulver, who's been on it for a long time, and Fred Dunnington, who may or may not be qualified.
I guess
for the audience, I should say that he's my husband, and that's a joke. Because he's also the town planner for 32 years, so he knows his way around that stuff. But so what is there to discuss, really? I guess I just don't understand what is there to discuss. It's a committee that has had an impact on the town. People come to visit this town. It's a beautiful town, a beautiful New England town, and we don't really want it to look like anywhere in USA. Why would we not? Well, help me understand why we would not. They're not contested. Why would we not appoint to this committee?
We will have a lengthy discussion about this at a future meeting on the agenda.
When?
I don't know.
It'll either be the 26th or the 9th.
The 1st of June. Yeah, I'll check now.
First of June.
First meeting of June.
Yeah. Right now it's on the draft agenda for the 26th.
But is it a discussion about appointing to I just don't understand. Can you just help me understand? Because is the discussion about whether to have one?
Potentially.
So is that the select board's decision, or is that something that comes out of the planning and zoning office?
Well, we approve zoning. But
we did approve the zoning that
Correct.
creates the committee.
Yeah.
We did already approve zoning that created the committee. It exists. So what? So help me, Victoria.
We have.
Don't get it.
This is not agenda item.
No, but
we'll take your comments, but I'm not interested in engaging this.
Here you would think of disbanding the committee.
Yeah, and when you came out of executive session and decided not to make appointments to that committee, you didn't say why. So I just do think you owe an explanation why, and we're going to talk about it isn't really an explanation to my mind. Why? No, it's an existing committee. I think you ought to make the appointments to the committee.
Thanks.
And it's helpful. It can only make things better.
That's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I just, is the select board going to legislate by not appointing to the committees? Because we've seen that in other areas of government, and it's not really a good way to govern. Please follow the ordinance.
Thanks.
People.
All right. Moving on, item number 5, the town boards and committees DRB staff update with J.R. Christ. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Mark has begun a process of bringing all of the chairs and committees in front of us on a routine basis, and this is an opportunity for us to learn more about what the DRB is up to, what you're up to.
Yeah, it was my understanding that there's also the component of Dave Hamilton, our chair, and wanting to keep me as liaison to the board, just to keep a separation between the politics of development and the review of development separate.
Sure.
As far as what's going on now, we don't have anything before the board before the end of May, and nothing. There's a tentative appeal to administrative decision that'll come in the beginning of June, and I'm currently working on 3 decisions that were part of the last DRB. A minor subdivision, Eastview is wanting to finalize a subdivision and can purchase its property from the college, and they did a boundary line adjustment to that property as well. And what was the third one?
The Ocean Greenhouse, is that?
Yes, the parking in front of Ocean.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, other than that, I'm here to liaise if they have any questions.
Questions, comments, discussion?
I appreciate you guys working through this whole remediation and floating around in this building wherever you can, right? So I really appreciate working through that. And still keeping up with everything. Thank you.
And JR joined the town staff about almost 2 years ago. A little less than that.
July of 24, yeah. So it'll be 2 years in July. And then took on the full ZA position.
He joined just under 2 years ago. He joined the town staff.
This time last year when Jen left and we needed someone to be able to sign permits while we were looking for a planner. And then there was a shuffling of how it was previously set up with Jen prior, and yeah.
So for the benefit of people who are new to this and people at home, the select board's role, function, and role relative to planning and zoning are 4 that come to mind. Adoption of town plan and zoning, which it is initiated through a public engagement process that Alicia is in just now, and then hearings and then presentation to the select board for approval. So the board is involved ultimately in approving the policies and procedures. Then there's the second function is the appointment of all the people involved, you and the members of the Planning Commission, DRB, and the Design Advisory at some point. And then 3, the budget to support this function of the government. And there's a 4th, but little used one, which is the select board actually is an interested person under the definition of the statute, which means you have party status to any hearing. It's rare that the board does this. One case comes to mind about a rice chopper development on Route 7 where the traffic congestion, according to the studies, was going to be so burdensome. The select board actually, as a board, took a motion to enter that proceeding and oppose that project, and it was denied in part on that basis.
Yeah. Wow. When was that, Fred?
What year was Price Chopper? I cannot. I'm sorry. I'm in a
2000 something.
Okay. Thanks, Victoria.
Long time ago. And when there are appeals, the board represents the town through the town attorney typically to support the board's decision. I'm not aware there's ever boards ever opposed or appealed a board decision. They rather supported it. So anyway, in the select board, I guess I would just ask, what does the DRB need that the select board could provide? Is there anything anything that's not working, anything that could work better? We want this process to work well for the town at our level. And
I mean, what comes to mind is, I guess it would be mostly educational, which is also part of my position as well, on what I just shared initially, which is the separation of the politics from the review process. And calling to mind the Middle Road apartment complex where we had a full room here, and so I don't know if it's a matter of outreach from our office or from the select board, but the component of, which I don't know that was well understood, we had a big turnout of mostly opposition to the project, and yeah, the disconnect between it's a process of reviewing a project as proposed to the town ordinances and the town plan versus a political process, and yeah, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind in that process, and speaking with the LTC at the time as well. You know, it's my position as a ZA to according to them in their training, to implement the zoning regulations, not interpret them or yeah. And so that component of the process is yeah, ultimately would be helpful in an education realm to the public, as to what we're doing and how a project gets approved, whether it's popular or not.
So as was mentioned earlier, the Design Advisory Committee is part of the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
And it was created to support applications up front coming through to the DRB. And Andy noted that it hadn't been staffed well in recent years. And do you agree with that? You've only been a few times that I know of that the DRB has requested design advisory review, and tell us your experience of that.
It's always it's similar to the DRB. It's an on-demand basis, and so it's, you know, I don't know, I've had at least one DRB per month for the 2 years I've been here, and maybe 2 of those 24 had been sent for review to the VAC, which has been helpful. And yeah, it's the only means by which currently we have to implement design criteria. It's advisory as well, so it's and often adds added perspective that the board might not have, as far as or Jim was mentioned, you know, an architectural design eye, landscapers. So yeah.
Looking at the minutes that are in our packet from the last DRB meeting on Aubuchon, which is a pending case, and I probably should talk about it, but the DRB did not ask for design advisory review, but ended up asking the applicant to basically redesign the site plan. Isn't that right?
Correct. Yeah.
So the design advisory committee is not the only one who has opinions about design in this town. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
Sure.
You think you're going to get rid of people's opinions about design? You're not.
Yeah. JR, I know that you say that the goal is to enforce the zoning, not to interpret it, but it's usually issues where there are variances requested that things get spicy, right? For Middle Road, they wanted to reduce setback and an interpretation of what the height was, right? Where are we measuring to?
Correct.
Does feet versus stories mean that it has to be the greater of those, or does it have to meet either of those? if we routinely give a variance, is there a ground for contesting if in some case we don't? If every place that someone comes in asking for a height variance, it's granted, are we creating a standard that's different than our actual written zoning?
In that case, there were two, that was an interpretation of ambiguity within the.
Sure.
Within the
No, absolutely. Yeah.
So is there an opportunity to, in this next round of zoning updates, to update?
To define the height better,
Yeah,
so that there's no ambiguity, right? But for, say, the setbacks, right?
Yeah.
That's a clear, non-conforming design against the zoning standards, right? The setback from Route 7 was less than it's supposed to be in that district.
Yes, the setback waiver section is also missing design criteria and in need of updating.
Okay.
And the board has the ability to approve a setback waiver of up to 50%.
Yeah.
And so it's, plus or minus 50%, it's or minus 50%.
Right.
Is how it would
Yeah.
turn
You're
out to be.
usually not going to successfully increase setbacks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
But you don't think it's I often worry about being proscriptive rather than descriptive. In some towns, you end up where a majority of lots existing don't meet the design guidelines for putting something new in.
Right.
And that's always felt like a problem of zoning when you end up in that situation. Do you have thoughts about that?
As far as having grandfathered lots that are.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, ultimately the updates are meant, the planning process is to plan.
Yeah.
It's not to.
Not to describe what exists, but to describe what you want to exist.
Exactly, and so it's, this is also the difference between waiver and variance, where, the variance is a higher standard, but if it's a lot that is undevelopable any other way, there's a means by which a variance to the zoning could be gotten in that sense. Also currently we have only one type of PUD that's allowable to be created.
Okay.
Current zoning doesn't allow a standard PUD to come into existence other than the traditional neighborhood development, which also has its own specific design criteria involved. I would say that with this zoning update that reinstituting a PUD would allow for more flexibility in lots that you described that are
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We used to have more liberal provisions relative to things that were made non-conforming. In other words, when you establish an ordinance, we want new things to be set back more or larger lots or whatever. But then that makes things that are pre-existing that don't meet that non-conforming uses.
Right.
And the idea is not to penalize those people, but give them reasonable opportunities to evolve and change, even if they can't change their lot size or so forth. But changes of use, of non-conforming use to conforming ones, there was quite a liberal procedure and criteria allowed. And that's because the board has to take into consideration all of the context of it. How is it going to impact neighborhood? What is proposed? How intensive is it? It's hard to write a rule for consistency.
Sure.
Whoever famous it was, it said consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
All minds, yes.
Now, so the zoning is built in performance criteria for things based on how they relate, what they are, where they are.
Sorry, I didn't mean to dominate this discussion. Are there other comments or questions for JR while he's here? Okay.
I have just one other. The DRB has, by statute, since you're representing the DRB and you're the staff for this, the staff is required, DRB is required to issue its decision within 45 days of the closing of the hearing. Otherwise, it's a deemed approval. In other words, by operational law, is if the approval is granted. And in a couple of recent cases involving big projects, that the decision has come out 42, 44 days after hearing, very close to the edge of that. And I'll just suggest, when I came to town, the procedure had been established by Betty Novo, who was the Planning Commission chair before me, that whenever possible, you should do draft findings to hand out at the hearing. So then the board is channeled to focus on the criteria and look at that draft finding if there won't be any reason, and test it by other questions instead of wandering around in other designs. And it also helps to expedite the actual issuance of it later on. It's just an idea. We'll use it for a couple of decades rather than waiting till the end to start writing. It's a lot more work for the staff, I can say, but I'm just going to suggest if we're customer service oriented, wanting to help educate and channel the boards towards criteria, it worked in that way in the past. And in a contested case, you can say, okay, other parties can submit their own proposed findings, and you can choose which one lines up the best to support the facts or conclusion you have to make. Anyway, it's just a thought.
So preempting decision, essentially.
No, it doesn't preempt anything. It just
So, Fred, would that lead to, if you have a draft that is published beyond the DRB, or is this just for internal use?
No, we would send it out to all interested parties, the public,
And-
all board members beforehand.
So if that's a result of the end of deliberative session?
No.
Or
The board can, and does in some challenging cases, deliberate in the midst of the session and give direction. And if it's a contested case, this may not be appropriate. The town shouldn't be taking sides necessarily, but not all the cases are seriously contested. Anyway, just a thought for you to think about. The same amount of work, it just comes earlier in the process, but it can help to channel the board and public when they come to a meeting and they're looking at it.
And I think that from a service aspect, from how well the town is performing its function, from the point of view of someone who has a question before us of whether or not they can do something, the sooner they get feedback, the more responsive we seem as an entity.
And the applicant comes into the process knowing what they're going to talk about, so it isn't so scary.
Right. Well, I mean, how would you describe that different than the staff notes we currently do as far as?
Well, notes are part of that, but at the end of the day, you need to produce that, and you can introduce what you're saying and say these are issues that the board might want to ask these kinds of questions on if you want to suggest things like that. That's entirely your discretion, but ultimately you have to come up with this, and the idea is to be service-oriented, help everybody through the process if you can, if you feel it's right, without it being too prejudicial. Just a suggestion to think about.
My last question, and then I'll be done. We get applications for boards, and we're not always sure how to evaluate them. What's needed for candidates? Do we want 6 engineers on the DRB? Do we want a lawyer and 2? When you think about the blending of the people who work together on the DRB, are there areas that are overrepresented or underrepresented in terms of perspectives and skills?
Well, of course, we have a couple of new members that I'm just getting to know now. I feel like we've lost some technical engineering perspective, but that we were also heavy on that. It feels like there's a diversity of the new members I can't really speak to, but yeah, I would. Design experience is preferred, you know, as an example of the Amazon, you know, and having less engineering. It's one thing for the board to re-engineer for an engineer who's coming to present.
Sure.
Yeah, in that case, it seems like with more experience, there's in this, for instance, it felt like the board was re-engineering in real time with less experience. I'm sure the engineer presenting was happy about, and it works both ways. It helps for design, and it helps to push back on questioning design characteristics that don't necessarily need to be questioned, I guess. But yeah, design experience, I guess, is the main piece.
Yeah.
From my point of view, I would just say that best qualification is board members who will listen and not try to be experts if they aren't. It's hard for me to do, for a lot of other people to do, but one of the reasons actually we created design advisory was because we had a situation in the early years I was here that some members who were on the board were employed locally in local construction firms, and they would walk around the table and present the application to their colleagues, and the appearance of that was not a good look.
Sure.
And so the idea of creating a design advisory committee was to have design professionals on that and have the board simply be in their judicial role, testing, is this a fact, is this the right, and taking information from experts, both sides. And in that way, they avoided a conflict of interest accusation on the board, but enabled applicants to be supported by constructive design review on the front end of an application. Also, doing that early on, before the applicant has tens of thousands of dollars in engineering and architectural expenses, and they're in a public hearing setting, if you're talking with them at the schematic stage before they have that, it's a lot easier to suggest ideas and understand their program and get constructive changes incorporated. That was the way it was designed anyway. So I'm sorry. It leads right into this. Once again.
All right. I'm not seeing other questions. Thanks so much, JR.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Good to have you here. So that went a little bit over the 5 minutes that were budgeted in our agenda. No, we had 10 budgeted. Went over that. Next up, agenda item 6, the continuation of the public hearing on the proposed relocation of town highway. We opened this and continued it twice.
Do you want to just hit the opening remarks?
Yeah, let me do that. In accordance with Title 19 VSA Section 709, the Select Board is continuing a public hearing to take further questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding the proposed relocation of Town Highway number 20 as it relates to the proposed solar project on Middle Road.
So there's a nice summary in the packet, so I won't start at the beginning, but I did want to mention for anyone joining this conversation for the first time or participating from home that this board held a site visit on April 14th after notifying all the butters and posting notices in the required locations. The public hearing was opened later that evening and then continued to April 28th. We continued it again on April 28th to May 12th tonight. And in the meantime, since that last meeting 2 weeks ago, staff worked with the developer to redesign that right of way. I think at the last meeting we had a very rough Sharpie sketch up on the screen for you to get the idea of the direction we were heading in. As of today, we do not have an updated survey from the developer. So, I also wanted to mention an updated recommendation from Emily was also included in your packet. So it was included a little on the later side. That was my bad, but we did include it in the last couple of days. So if you haven't seen it yet, take a look at that. So we're waiting now for an updated survey and for our attorney to draft the findings. So my recommendation to you this evening is to do nothing more than just continue this hearing to May 26th. 7:20 p.m. here at the town offices.
Would that be enough time, or should we go for the next meeting after that?
I've been told the survey should be ready by next week, so that should be adequate time.
Will the staff be able to prepare some draft findings for us to vote
Our
on?
attorney, Benj, has been asked to have those draft findings prepared by the 22nd so we can include them in the Friday packet.
Well, I would move to
It's a
continue this
public hearing. We should see if the public is interested in
I'm sorry.
speaking. Is there anyone here who would like to participate in this public hearing on this right-of-way change? Fred?
I would move to continue this public hearing to the next select board meeting on May 26th, 7:20 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hearing is continued.
Closing remarks.
Their closing remarks?
Oh, it's okay.
We did it.
Yeah.
All right. Karen, item number 7, and we're ahead of time again, because that was a quick public hearing.
No.
All right. Hi, I'm Karen Mott, I'm the town clerk. I am totally prepared to give you a general update of what's going on in the town clerk's office, but I'm here at your behest and for your pleasure. So if you have questions for me first, I'd like to use the time most doing that.
I think you should give us an update first.
Update, okay, I'll do that. All right, so I'm just gonna run down the town clerk's office work plan that we work off of every week. So right now, under the topic of elections, we're getting ready mostly for the August state primary. We just became able to start accepting applications for state offices from major party candidates only, starting April 27th. We have received none so far. I'm anticipating we will receive 3 maximum. This is not an election that requires us to do a lot on the petition part of the process, but it requires a lot of administration for the actual primary itself, because we have to separate into Addison 1 and Addison 5. It means we have to double the amount of staff we have for check-in, check-out. We need a lot more interpreters and things like that. I bring that up as a reminder that you are all a part of the BCA, a very important part of the BCA, and it's actually part of your job to help out with elections. So when I do reach out to you for help with those, it's great to have your help. And it's great for folks to see you in those roles as long as you're not somebody who's being elected at that time. And that won't apply to any of you all for the August primary. It is the 2nd Tuesday in August. And this year, in addition to asking for help with possibly early ballot processing and then help on the day of the election itself, I am probably going to be reaching out to ask for some folks to give us some assistance with setup and maybe with breaking down afterwards. In years past, we've had phenomenal help from the rec department and from DPW, getting everything moved over there and set up. We don't have quite as robust a staff right now at the rec department as we have. They are still, this is not coming from the rec department, this is coming from me. They're 100% cooperative and help us in every way to get things set up, but I don't want to ask too much of them. And I think we could use a couple extra bodies for just making that happen and making it smoother for everybody. So I'll start sending out invite emails probably in early June to see if anybody's available to help out in that way. As you know, we do land records recording. This year, I would say is going to turn out to be considerably larger for the number of pages of recording that we process and are paid for than it has been for the past 3 or 4 years. And that would be almost entirely due to stone crop. There's, I'd say every day, I think there's a document for stone crop every day that comes in. And that doesn't mean like a whole packet of documents for them, but something, either a permit or a property transfer, tax return, or something like that comes through related to stone crop every day. And that's been the case for the past couple of months or so. So you could expect at the end of the year that our revenues for reporting will look larger than usual. And we could expect that next year or the year after, they're going to look a little smaller because there's not a stone crop that pops up every year. I think I had mentioned to you all a few months ago that we did have all of our maps put online, so they are available to the public through Record Hub. We're trying to make those more available than they are right now by going back and trying to link parcel numbers to existing maps as they come in. We are running into some limitations with the software, and we're in conversations with COTS right now who administers our Record Hub software to try to see if there's a way to make it a little easier for us to modify the entries so people can find what they're looking for more easily. That's not very interesting to talk about, but it's taking up an awful lot of our time.
Sure.
Vital records, we do births, deaths, and marriages. That's birth records, death records, and we do produce marriage licenses as well. Right now, as for town clerks all over New York State and other states that border Canada, we are experiencing a bumper crop of requests for vital records, especially for ancestors. Folks that are hoping to get Canadian citizenship or dual citizenship because Canada recently revoked its limitation on ancestral qualifications as a way to get in as a dual citizen. And so lots of our folks here have parents or grandparents or great-grandparents who were indeed born in Canada, which can help to pad your citizenship application. So there's tons of those coming in. A lot of folks are super disappointed because we have learned that a grandparent is the farthest relationship from a human being who's applying for it that can be received by that person. So there are other avenues for getting vital records in that situation, like finding perhaps if you're looking for your grandparent but can't have their birth or death certificate, you can hopefully have a parent or an aunt or an uncle that can get that for you.
I didn't realize there were limits on requesting.
There are limits.
So,
It's
interesting.
It doesn't come up very often because folks aren't usually looking for certified copies of folks farther back than grandparents.
Yeah.
We do give non-certified copies which have the same information but aren't necessarily legally binding.
Not something you're going to bring to the Immigration Board of Canada.
Not something I'm going to bring to them,
Right.
for sure. Yeah, that's what's going on with that. Dogs. Speaking of dogs, we just got through most of the initial dog licensing period. All dog licenses were due to be on time unless it's a dog that's new to you or Middlebury by April 1st. After that, there's a whopping $2 late fee for anybody that chooses to do it in arrears, or $4 if your dog has not been fixed. We had a little fun with that. We did do a raffle for anybody that got their dog license in by April 1st. They got a chance at winning a big bag of Vermont-made dog biscuits, and that was fun. We had Bo Jackson won the dog raffle. And as well, we've been trying to coordinate a little bit more with Homeward Bound, and Drew and I had the pleasure of attending their last rabies clinic of the season on April 18th, and we got a chance we used it as an opportunity to try out some of our off-site tech equipment to see if we could do more off-site events.
Cool.
We registered or offered registration for dogs right there as folks were doing, getting their rabies shots. We did register one. I didn't have a strong understanding of how the rabies clinic was set up, and it was, it's entirely in your car. And we're set up at a table in the front. We could have done better, but we were learning as we were going. But it did serve its purpose, and that was to build awareness and also prove to us that yes, indeed, our off-site equipment does work in the way that we had hoped it would. So we can do a lot of other things like voter drives, Green Mountain Pass drives, and dog registrations off-site as well, which I would be interested in doing, so, as weather allows. We're having a Green Mountain Pass drive right now for a little, if you apply for a Green Mountain Pass from now until the end of the state park season, which would be, I think for most of them, it's Indigenous Peoples' Day. Some close a little bit before that. Anybody that applies for one then and gets one, and you have to be 62 or better and a Middlebury resident to get your Green Mountain Pass here, or a veteran of any age. Then you will be in the running for a fabulous Vermont State Park Prize, which you can take a look at the town clerk's office. That's where that is.
Don't qualify.
As far as, we do a budget check-in every month when we receive our budget status report, and everything is looking as we would expect it to right now. We don't have any over expenditures that we would be concerned about. And as far as revenues, everything looks like it normally would at this time of the year, except for, as I mentioned, the recording is a higher rate than we would typically have at this part of the year. And that's all I planned to talk about, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you say the state, what date did you say state primary is in?
It's the second Tuesday in August.
August 11th.
August 11th,
Yeah.
okay.
Which is different than every other election, and I don't really know why.
I know that we've talked to you about the question of the charter vote. I know that Fred and Izzy probably have better memory than me, but what date are we heading for?
Well,
And how much load is this on
we're heading
you?
for either a special town meeting solely on this, or doing it at the general election in the fall. And I visited with Karen a few times about this, and they've been thinking, okay, so let's think about what really is going to be happening at the general election, for example.
Right.
In any event, the charter requires the whole thing be
Available.
New one be in each voting booth, because it's just a question of should you support this yes or no. And it's conceivable there'll be other ideas that come up in the process, and we might have those as separate questions. The ones that are wild ideas, and we don't want to sink the whole ship of all the other housekeeping corrections with something that's more controversial. But so that's possible in this process that we. But you pointed out, the preparation for this is what happens with absentee ballots. Okay, and in the general election, those are getting mailed out to everybody.
They have to be available 40 days before the election.
So the question would be,
Send
out to everybody.
Copy of the charter?
No.
Okay,
Well,
good.
you're going to say you're going to create some informational thing that says information on this is available on the town website or whatever.
Yep.
And the summaries that we were working through, that besides the red line text, there's the summaries that David's offering good summary, and the other general information that I prepared, or committee prepared. So we have to think of this like, what extra burden will this be?
Yes.
It will slow up the lines if people start to read the whole bloody thing in the voting booth.
Nobody's going to do that.
And then an independent special town meeting vote, which might be in October or something. The problem with that is that each election is a significant burden on the department. Fair to say. And having an October one and then a November one is, so we're trying to figure out which.
So I just have one question. Which one do you want to do it in?
In the spirit of what we're talking about, I would vote that we would do this as part of the general election.
Okay. That's all we need to know.
I think you
We'll
have
do
to
our
remember that a
best.
significant number of the folks who vote in the general election will vote absentee.
Yep.
I'm making a wild assumption that a lot of the folks that would be particularly concerned about the charter changes will vote absentee, and therefore they'll have lots of time to review any part of the charter that they'd like to, as long as it's been publicly available to them, what the proposed changes will be in that way. Do we hang up a sign that says here's a charter change review area somewhere without it actually being in the voting booth. I mean,
It can't be in the election place.
In the lobby,
yeah,
I
you
think
can't
we
do-
could.
Yeah, you can't be in the election place for
So
that. It
we'll
would
do
slow down
counseling down the
things.
street or something.
Yeah, you can do counseling on the street. Yeah, I don't see it as an issue. I don't think so. I mean, we haven't tried it before, but I'm guessing if people were really concerned about those charter changes, they probably will know about it ahead of time, and they will most likely vote early. And again, I'm making wild assumptions that aren't necessarily based on experience at all. And if we find that it is slowing down lines, we say, hey, here's a voting booth where you can really take your time, and if you don't really want to take your time, you can move to some of these others. I don't know what's legal or anything with regard to that kind of thing, picking and choosing people's voting booths, but it doesn't feel like a big concern. It feels like a bigger concern to me to try to fit in an October election.
Fantastic.
That's very helpful to know.
That's
Thank you.
super.
I mean, I'd rather skip it on down the line to an odd year, which is a much better place to put something like that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. That's great, and I think I will appreciate having the higher turnout that we'll get by piggybacking on the general election rather than having a special election with 1,000 people, whatever, showing up. It's awesome.
Karen, can you speak to how we keep our voter rolls accurate, especially with college students graduating, things like that, what our process is?
There's a lot of different ways. I'd say one of the biggest ways that happens is because the state automatically sends out general election ballots to all registered voters in Vermont. And if they don't make it to a registered voter, it comes back in the mail to us. And because they send those out 40 days before, there's lots of time to find that out. Once, I think we had every 3 or 4 years, there's a BCA challenge that we have together. And I think we had one last year.
Yes.
And so as things like that are happening, like I think last time's general election, we got 1,800 ballots back. And it's mainly because of that shifting of the folks at the college. It's going to happen.
Yep.
People sign up. They're not from Vermont. They sign up and get excited as college students to vote in Vermont. And then they go back to where they came from. And they're registered somewhere else, or they have registered again and not voting here. All of those folks get what is called challenged. You're an active voter. We have just about exactly 6,000 active voters in Middlebury. There are about 870 some, I think, as of yesterday, who are challenged voters. And challenged does not mean you can't vote. It means something has happened with your record that makes us think that you might not be living here and eligible to vote, like having your mail returned to us, such as a ballot, like having not participated in 2 general elections, 2 whole periods and anything in between there. Like somebody having had a PTTR go through us that says that you sold a house. There's all different kinds of reasons why we might put your status in as challenged. And that happens all the time. It's happening every day. So in very small towns, sometimes once a year they'll go through and review a set of a voter checklist with the BCA and decide we're going to challenge these folks, and then we'll take them off after the period of time has passed that they need to be challenged. And then they're called purged because they're off of your list. But instead, we do it every day. So every day, I'm getting PTTRs and challenging folks, or a return dog license, and I can't reach the person to confirm that they're there anymore. So I challenge them. Anything that indicates to us that this person might not be eligible to vote is an opportunity to challenge. And that's not us being overzealous. It's a good way to keep keeping your list clean in the voter world. And once again, it doesn't mean you can't vote. If you show up to vote, great. Just prove to us that, yes, this is your address, actually. Or re-register to vote if you've been purged. There's always ways in Vermont you can do that on the day of the election, so nobody's being excluded in that way. But after a period of time, if you're challenged and you go through 2 general election periods and you haven't participated in any elections, then you will be purged.
Thank you.
Sure.
Love the mechanics of voting. Any other questions for our esteemed clerk? Thanks so much, Karen.
Sure thing.
It's great to have you.
Yes, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Oh, let me get out of Record Hub that I can't get into because I need to be a clerk to get in there to see things.
You do not?
I do not?
No?
Oh, guest user.
Yeah, you can be a guest user. You just
Free
can't
access to all indices.
print anything out unless you're paying $5.
Oh, all
Of which
right.
we get a cut.
Very nice. All right. Emily, it's infrastructure time.
Infrastructure time.
Welcome. We haven't seen you in the flesh in a while.
Has it been that long?
A little while.
Yeah, I feel like it hasn't been.
Okay.
But that's cool. So infrastructure, we have a lot going on in town now. It's like ramping up. Things are getting busy again. The DN tanks rolled in 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. They're a little bit. They were able to start on site a little bit ahead of schedule, and so they're pouring pipe pits now this week, and then the rebar crew comes in tomorrow to start doing the steel for the floor of the tank, and then we'll start pouring the floor next week.
I walk by there every day, poke my head up and see what's going on. It's pretty cool.
Wearing closed-toed shoes and proper PPE.
Of
right?
course.
Just from the
I
top
mean,
of the woods.
obviously.
I have steeled myself for not up there because I know you've got cameras in the site. Chew me out.
Yeah.
I will
have
set
not gone up. I
up.
just see them drive up the street a lot.
I think the most exciting part of the tank construction is when they're swinging the panels into place. And so that's what I would propose to set up
Cool.
as a time.
If you let us know when that's happening.
I absolutely will. So I need to
That's
coordinate
super
it with DN Tanks because they're going to have like a whole booth there because other towns are also going to want to come to see the process. So it'll be like a one-time thing that hopefully as many of you as possible
Neat.
can accommodate. But it won't have to be necessarily like at 11:30 a.m. Like it'll be over a stretch of time on that day.
Cool.
So hopefully we can get you all up there. It's pretty amazing. So that is in full swing. The wastewater plant, the design is moving forward. We're on track for the main pump station and SBR controls, the smaller project that we split off. That is going out to bid at the end of June. So those bids will open late July. There will be a bit of a process for that approval and award and then submittal, so it won't be construction starting immediately. But that's exciting to see that piece of it get moving. And we've simultaneously been working on the larger project for the overall upgrade at the main plant. We did not qualify for Becca Balance grant submittal that I submitted back in February. I have not heard back yet from Welch or Sanders, so those are still out there. Potential funding. Yeah.
Pearl. Okay.
Yeah. Mark and I did have a meeting with the team that works with MBRC, and so we didn't get that grant in this round largely because of the water tank having not exhausted the funding, or at that point that we haven't used any of the funding yet. But we'll be in a much better position for it in the September round of applications. And I felt like they had a positive reception to our application. It was more just not having enough funding expended. Okay. So I think we have a good chance in that round. And I'll still take a similar approach of trying to split out the project for solids handling. And that way, if we do get the funding, we could potentially tag on another component of the project for additional funding. We had our skate park public presentation Friday night last week.
Great.
It was good. We had, I counted 32 people total. Of that, I think it was 19 members of the public, including 8 little kids running around, which is always fun to see. Pretty fired up. We are coordinating with the school and the funding agency, the grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We're sort of in like the final moments of getting all of the pieces compiled for that funding. So if we can get the lease agreement language dialed in with the school district, I think we're in good shape for that funding by July 1st. And then that will give us until, I forget, it's 2028 to go to construction. So it gives us a little bit of time.
And we have that long to figure out the match.
To do fundraising for the match, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exchange Street multi-use path project is out to bid now. We had a pre-bid meeting today with two potential applicants were there. There are other plan holders, but we don't have a required attendance at those pre-bids. So hard to know how much interest there is. I think it's totally feasible for that project to get done for November.
Wow.
Which is the current, they'll have to come back in next year just to do touch-up work on soil and stuff like that. But for the most part, we should be able to get it done.
Question on the timing of that. In the consent agenda, there was a report on the traffic calming request involving the intersection down by Greg's Market. And I thought that was handled well personally, but the idea was that there would be some crosswalk improvements and a flashing. Does that wait until November? Can that happen sooner? Or?
I think we're
That's
not
part
doing
of-
the flashing.
You're talking about RK Miles.
Yeah,
There.
are you at RK Miles or are you at the Elm Street intersection?
I was at the Elm Street intersection, the subject of the traffic calming report that you put in.
We did not determine the flashing beacon.
Oh, you didn't? I misread that.
That's at that end of Exchange, but it's just further up, closer to RK Miles. The intersection itself will just receive striping, new reflective flags. That's it.
Okay. I understand. It is a challenging intersection the way the letter presented it. Sometimes.
The flashing beacon will be in an area where cars aren't necessarily stopping or expecting to stop.
Yeah.
At the intersection, everybody's stopping, so it'll just be refreshed crosswalks.
Okay.
And then the last piece of updates, I've been working with this group from UVM that are members of the Engineers Without Borders team at UVM, doing some stormwater design for a private residence in Middlebury that had flooding in the August storm.
Cool.
Yeah, so we kind of missed the deadline due to finals lining up with when the funding was due, but there will be another round of funding in the fall, and the students say they're going to keep working on it and get me a final plan by the end of May.
These are not
So we
all
will see.
graduating
They are not all
seniors.
No, I don't think any of them are seniors.
Amazing.
Actually. So they're all coming back
That's
next
great.
year regardless. So I would rather put it on hold and get
Cool.
a well-formulated plan.
That's awesome.
But it's still a fun process working with them and just seeing what they're coming up with. I think that's it for updates, unless there's any questions.
You've taken on some management for wastewater in our town.
A little bit, yeah.
How's that going?
It's going okay.
Okay.
I think it's more than, so I'm director of operations, interim director of operations, but I'm also sort of taking on the superintendent duties because the superintendent does all of the reporting to the state, and so we have monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, annual reporting, and so I've been tasked with that, which is a lot on top of my other work.
Sure.
But we are getting through it. I met with an individual from the state who kind of helped guide me through some of the steps that were hanging me up last week. So it's all part of the learning curve. We'll get there.
Thanks for stepping up and stepping in. It's much appreciated.
I appreciate the state's patience.
Good. I'm glad that everyone is working together on that.
Yeah.
I saw some notes about developing additional water sources. Is there, but I did not read them as thoroughly as I should have.
Okay, so
what's the
if
approach
you,
there?
if you look in the April 9th,
Yeah.
whatever our infrastructure was, and I think it was April 9th, there's a really nice presentation from Otter Creek
Oh, good.
in that packet.
In the packet.
Yep, and so Robert came in and gave us a presentation. We've essentially narrowed it down to 4 locations to look, well, 3 locations to look at. One being another well at Palmer, one being an additional well on the Johnson site, one being in East Middlebury, sort of near where their well is, closer to Route 7, because then it would mean adding infrastructure to build it out on Route 7, but
Sure.
it would also provide another strong source and help make improvements on the Route 7 corridor. So those 3 sites, and then the 4th consideration is incorporating East Middlebury's water system into Middlebury's, which has sort of just been a conversation over the years going back and forth between our 2 parties. And so the way we left that conversation was to have Otter Creek do a little bit of a cost analysis with all of the different proposals. Obviously, some have much more infrastructure needs.
Sure. If you're running a line all the way down 116, that's
exactly.
substantial.
But there's also a lot of benefit that
Yeah.
you would gain from it. So just to weigh it out differently. So when
Sure.
he comes back, we'll bring
Cool.
it back to him.
What's the expected timeline for starting exploration on?
Years ago.
Okay.
I think once we narrow down a location, which I would presume would be based on cost for this phase, we would drill a test well on that site, and then start building out what we would actually be producing to see if it matches expectations.
I think far more challenging than any engineering in this is the prospect of the last option, the merger with the fire district. You can imagine East Middlebury Fire District that pays no water, they don't have water meters.
Right.
They pay a much lower water rate, wanting to merge with, the program that we are looking at. They might even be, if we were proposing a well next to theirs, be worried about affecting their supply. So that one has some non-engineering
There's
issues.
some political issues.
The infrastructure committee didn't talk too much about that.
They also have a considerable amount of infrastructure upgrade that is needed in their system. That, because they have historically kept their rates low, has not been.
Sure.
They don't have the capital reserve
Some
that we have.
deferred maintenance, as it were.
Yeah.
Yep. Tastes good?
Tastes good.
the mineral infiltration tastes good?
Yeah, it is harder than our water.
It's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's harder than our water, so we would have to treat for that, and the pressure is very different than our system, so we'd have to deal with that. Just food for thought.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Anything else on updates before we get into the really fun stuff?
I'm looking around. I'm not seeing people chomping with questions.
So I think Dean's online too, but I'm guessing we'll be able to get through this. We put out an RFP for SCADA, the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which we will be incorporating into the wastewater upgrade, and so we're going to need somebody. We need to acquire a company without going through the sole source process. So I wanted to do it through an RFP just so that we could go through the process so that we're not getting permission from the state or from other funding agencies for sole source. So essentially we received 2 different quotes. One from, I forget their name, the CA New England Integrators, which is Champlin that we work with all the time, both on our water and wastewater system. And so we are recommending to move forward with that proposal for this contract.
Great.
Infrastructure Committee reviewed this and recommended this favorably.
And,
Uh,
yeah,
Heather really appreciated the side-by-side comparison and the in-depth review.
What made you want to go with them?
They have a lot of historical knowledge of our system. They're local, and so we've been working with them for years, so it is beneficial to the town.
and the SCADA controls are one of the systems which is end of life and hard to maintain at this point. Is that the case?
Dean, do you want to speak to that? A lot of them are being updated, but it's an important form of
Yeah.
communication for everything to talk to each other.
Absolutely. Evening, Dean. Welcome back.
You hear us, Dean?
Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yes. Did you hear Andy's question regarding our current SCADA situation if we're at end of life or where we're at?
You're muted again, Dean. Just have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
We can now.
Yep.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I thought I recalled that when we did the tours that some of the relay controls and the electrical systems were things that Jeremy pointed out where he was scavenging parts to keep them running. And I was wondering if this SCADA sub-project was about replacing those systems that were effectively end of life.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
We're having to we're having to buy parts off eBay,
Yeah.
used parts.
Yeah.
When you do that, probably half the time, it's a flip of a coin
Whether it
they
works.
even work or
Yep.
not. So definitely end of life on that stuff.
Yeah.
So this is very important to get control of the plant as we move into the bigger upgrade.
Sure.
So
Yeah, the SCADA that I'm familiar with is just down the road at the Agrimark plant, and
Exactly.
it's a little
Very
different.
similar.
Yeah, but very similar, right? A lot of automation for a whole lot of chemistry and moving of fluids. Very similar in that regard. Cool. Thanks, Dean.
yes, thank you.
So this is in the SBR controls component of the first project that we're putting out.
Sequenced batch reactor.
Yeah,
SBO.
man. Yeah, get all the oxygen load out of that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got a motion in the packet, I think.
Yep.
I move to approve the proposal from CA New England Integrators for improvements to the supervisory control and data acquisition system at the wastewater treatment facility.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate. Aye.
Aye.
100%, Emily.
Excellent. The next item that we have is the construction inspection services for the Exchange Street multi-use path. With the grant funding that we have, which is through VTrans, 3 different grants, maybe 4. In a 14-year period. We are not allowed to utilize the design engineer, which is Bowman, as our construction inspection team.
Why?
Just for conflict of interest.
Okay.
So we have to hire construction inspection out. Bowman will be on site occasionally and checking in as needed, but the overall day-to-day operations will be through this contract instead. And we received 2 different submittals for this one, John Turner and GPI. I've worked with both historically. GPI reached out to me and got the project plans and the upfront language for the project of the bid docs. So have a more thorough understanding of the project, I'd say, than what John Turner drafted their proposal with. And so we're requesting that the select board approve their contract for the estimated $101,775. There's some give or take in that depending on hours and overtime and rain days and who knows what other things might be thrown at us.
Sure.
Likewise, the infrastructure committee recommended this as in the form that's presented to you for GPI. Heather appreciated the scoring system.
I think she was disappointed with it on this one because I did it on this one. She liked the more thorough one for the SCADA
I didn't
review.
get that. Okay, well, anyway,
All right, we have a recommendation.
we move to approve the engineering agreement with GPI for construction engineering services for $101,775.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions, discussions, comment? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate. Aye.
Aye.
Thanks so much, Emily.
You're welcome. The only other note I would make is that both water and wastewater budgets are posted in this week's packet for infrastructure.
Great. Question about all of the water notices going out. My neighbors are losing.
For yesterday's shutdown.
That didn't happen. And
Isn't that a good thing though? Because then they actually had water?
sure, no, it's great, except they know they won't in the future, and there's
So-
dread involved.
Yeah, I think we were ready for it yesterday, and I don't know what happened on the contractor's end, but they called it off at the last minute.
Okay.
So it will happen again. I don't know that we have the new date
We
yet.
do not yet.
We don't, yeah.
But the contractor had too many jobs happening all at once,
Sure.
so we
Yeah.
needed to cancel last minute.
It's a pretty major
Yeah.
cut that they're making
Yeah.
on our transmission main. So
Right.
we really want it to
You
go
better
well.
have attention.
Help them focus.
Okay, very good. Okay,
Yeah. So
thanks.
it will happen. There
Yeah.
will be 2 shutdowns
Yeah.
for it to completely occur
Okay.
in this phase. But then we'll also have more control within that section of the system.
Great.
Because we'll be adding some valves that work.
Valves at work and it will exercise.
It'll-
It's all gonna be amazing.
Reduce the isolation zone for subsequent shutdowns.
And with all these notices that are going out, it is bringing in a lot of people signing up for the text notifications.
Good.
So
Yeah,
it's
I'll tell you.
always, every time this sort of thing happens,
learning.
it does create a influx in that, which is great, so we can notify people quicker. Sounds great.
Awesome.
The first shut off that happened before this, a few days ago, actually had someone complain jokingly that, they filled up all the tubs with water.
Yeah.
And the testing of the valve happened very quickly, and so they said, how come the water wasn't shut off? And I said, well, I think it was briefly. They were sitting around with them.
Yeah, their tubs are all full and, yeah,
He was joking.
that's good. Be well.
Thank you. That was on.
Very good. That brings us to 8:15, 8:20, pretty close. Charter Review Committee, continued presentation of proposed town charter changes.
Okay, we left off at subchapter 7 on page 9.
My favorite spot.
It should be.
I know.
This is
Let
the
me,
subchapter on the town manager.
Yeah.
So, the benefit of people at home watching and others who are trying to reorient themselves to this week are just in this stage orienting full select board from the committee on the proposal changes, calling attention to the things that are changed and are more significant or involve more debate. Subsequent to this, we would have we would circle back to anything that we wanted to revisit that had been flagged along the way and consider any new ideas that other members have that we have not addressed, and then vote to proceed with a schedule, set dates for the the 2 public hearings that are required. So this is just a work session for us to take you through the changes that were done. Most of these are self-explanatory. For example, the first one here, section 701, that our new manager was actually hired not for an indefinite term, but I was told from seeing this contract, I was told we do this by contract, and so that's a change. We're trying to bring it in conformity. 702, manager to be non-partisan. I got it. I actually wondered in working on this whether we shouldn't require other parts of officers and so forth to be non-partisan, but we did not. There's no changes in that section. Oath and bond. The reason that and bond is struck is because Martin tells us that he's not required to give a bond.
The manager shall be a resident of the town of Middlebury.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Well, that's been in the charter, but there is provision there.
It says right next
to
to it.
grant the manager permission to live outside should there be sufficient reason.
Kathleen did not live in Middlebury.
There's a
The next
read number
sentence.
C.
Well,
That's what I'm reading, right?
we may grant permission, and apparently we did.
Okay. Why do we have the clause?
Right, that's the question. Why do we have a presumption that they live within Middlebury?
Well, so they can experience the joy of paying taxes and water and sewer bills and so forth, and be closer to.
They're going to hear all the complaints,
they're
regardless of
pretty
whether or
close as
not
it is,
they
but,
pay it.
This suggests it and makes an allowance for it that we have experimented with successfully, thankfully, in the past, and that there wasn't any desire to change that. I think all things being equal, it would be best if the manager was a resident of the town, but it's just not possible in every instance. So
I think it's kind of important to leave in there because go through another next hiring process that people not a requirement to live there, so you might have people applying with the expectation they don't have to live near the town.
Yeah.
So
I think
they have to live here? Why do they have to live in town?
What if they lived in Connecticut and wanted a job from Connecticut?
No, that doesn't make sense.
I mean,
then we might not hire them, but
right.
Well, yeah, but I think I'm with Dan. When I first reread this, I was like, why have something when you are explicitly saying that you may not do it? But I think that being part of the community as much as possible, including taking part in the feeling of the place outside of work hours, is important for understanding the residents and the whole ecosystem of the town.
You have to live in town now.
Yeah, well, I hope you can find a place to live. For now.
Unless we grant permission.
You probably won't
Okay.
after that.
There is a provision in my contract that allows me to live outside of Middlebury. My assumption is that that was just carried over from Kathleen's contract.
We'll strike it next year, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I've asked for this before, but I just, in passing, I would still like to see a copy of, and I think the other members should see a copy of the contract that we have with you at some point. Sorry, it's not related.
Yeah.
I'm trusting that the contract we have, even though it doesn't comply with the charter, that 701 is a good contract.
Otherwise it doesn't.
Moving on, section 704, well, let's get past the bond. Mark informed us that he's not required to give a bond because the parts of the organization that are more, what parts of the organization are required to give a bond at this point? Do you know? Offhand? Is Nick or?
I believe it's just finance roles.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we.
Generally, the town covers.
Yeah, the
cost
town
of
covers the
bond
cost.
anyway.
We're
It's
not. Yeah, we're
provided
not
by-
requiring a person to do that.
All right, duties of the manager, section 704. Let's see, most of this is self-explanatory. In G, remember when the old charter was written, we were using the calendar year as the fiscal year, and this G really refers to the preparation of the town annual report. And then obviously the finances that we have for that only for the last completed fiscal year. So that just clarifies that based on the shift from calendar year to fiscal year some time ago. H, what we agreed upon was a reasonable time, was a quarterly rather than monthly review of financial statements. I was an addition based on, what was it, 2 years ago we had a retreat on wanting this?
Yep.
Let's see. J, we didn't understand the difference between the town and the whole town. We're whole.
Maybe it's Middlebury was getting the book.
Yeah, I don't know. In L, there was the provision in the old charter that the manager needed to get approval from the select board before appointing, or removing, or suspending head of any department. And that is archaic, as it has turned out, because as time has come on, we've had more professionalism and delegation to the manager come to Middlebury, and so the manager handles those kinds of disciplinary issues and reports to the select board typically, or to the personnel committee. Mark, want to add anything to that?
No, I think that captures it, especially in this hiring climate. It's, I think, more appropriate for the manager to have the authority to appoint.
And was this the line that allows or prevents it from applicants having to wait a really long period in between two meetings to hear back?
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant by the line, that we need to, in some cases, lock down an employee much sooner than a 2-week waiting period for the next select board.
And we added O. This is from someone who spent a year archiving for the town, and we had Andy invited in the college archivist who gave us a good session on this, and this sentence in O is the result of that. Our charter previously said nothing about archiving for public records, and so this is a requirement of state law, and we managed to have some system of management for town records and archives, so it's up to the manager to delegate that appropriately to department heads in whatever system is required, and they're different for different departments. So let's see, no changes in 705 or 706.
706, we increased how long we can have a temporary manager.
Yes, we did. We gave ourselves more time for a temporary manager.
It's not clear what would happen if the 90 days expired and we had not found a permanent manager. That's not clear from the charter. Still is not even at 180 days.
Well, that's why we have section 707.
There we go.
I don't know if you've ever invoked this, Mark, but you could designate someone if you were on vacation, and whether it be David or whoever you. We did add this provision if the select board does not consent that, for example, if you delegated it to someone who board, I can't really imagine you doing this, but someone that was not suited.
Dog mayor.
Yeah, right. Okay, so moving on. Town meeting. In the old charter, section 902, ballot boxes. The state law now has the hours for elections, so this is does not need to be specified for our town in a way that's different. No other changes under eligible voters, polling places. or postponing and combining of town meetings. In 906, we've changed the title to be a little more clear that the select board has the option to devise the warning for meetings to have articles by voice versus Australian ballot. That's been the case for many years. Zoning and planning, subchapter 11. Interestingly, the charter, as it was originally written, had the select board solely appointing the zoning administrator, like JR. And the way that department heads or important positions within that organization are best organized is to have the manager and his team do the recruiting, vetting, and to square this with state law, which does require the select board, we are suggesting that this be sort of a nomination process. And that way Mark gets to choose the person that has the best fit and qualified and would nominate them and then present it to the select board for acceptance or ratification. So that's the way we sort of went in between the practice that we've come to for department head hires and state law. No need to ratify the 1968 zoning ordinance. It's long past for the subdivision regs. We struck those sections. Minutes. There's nothing particular to comment on this, except that just like the other documents that we have, we're using the internet now instead of putting minutes in books and libraries solely. Budget and taxation, clarifying the fiscal year. Let's see, on to page 13. Most of this deals with changing the names of old school districts that no longer are named the Incorporated District Number 4, which is the elementary school board, or the Union District Number 3, which was the high school. We're just going to call it the school district that serves the town, whatever the state names it to, process that they're in right now. And then in D, prior to finalizing the budget, 4 days before, we give notice in the newspaper or other publication chosen by the select board, as we discussed in other parts of the charter, at least 7 days before. And in its final form, it needs to be distributed not in full mail to everybody, like used to be the case, but by posting on the town website with a text notice to voters who have registered or requested notification at least 10 days prior to.
Now, does text notice there indicate using our texting service? That this is like SMS or?
Well, we could change that to something else.
I think if we just said notice, then we're more flexible.
Okay. Take the word text out.
Thanks.
Do we all agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Saving clause, standard boilerplate and ordinances, appropriations, no change there. Not to be raised by taxation.
Took an axe to 1305B.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the school district, we just said
School district.
the school district.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
And save some real estate. 1306, budget borrowing, no changes there.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. We haven't had a chance to use that very often because we have a
Probably a good
generous
idea.
fund balance apparently.
It's good we're not.
Yeah.
When we were-
Anticipation.
Yeah.
Transfer
Loans, yeah.
appropriations, we can be content with a request by the manager at a meeting, or a written request. So we struck that word. Taxation. Payments, instead of voting every year on whether there's 2 payments or 3 payments or whatever, if the technology improves someday, or the systems that cause us to have only 2 payments can change, the select board is free to move to something that's more comfortable for people, if it is, but like some towns like Brattleboro has 4 payments a year. I don't know how they do it, but
Wow.
you know, it's not as big a bill to pay. And
No more voting.
Huh?
No more voting.
No more voting at town meeting. This is, I know, we're not trying to ruin town meeting, but this is, I think the question came up at town meeting. Why do I have to vote on this?
Yeah, for sure. It comes up frequently.
My neighbor.
Local option tax and revenues. I might just say on 1308, I have to mention that, you know, some towns, Burlington particularly, and maybe others, I don't know, have the ability to make some policies locally through their own voters on tax classification. And it's tempting to suggest that we ask for a similar enabling authority. Now, I don't really have any particular idea or plan for that, but you know, if you wanted to tax vacant developable properties to force them to become
do something
more
Yeah,
developed for housing, or I don't know what
I can imagine that.
appropriate things might be thought of, but I'm putting that in the category of wild ideas. Remember, anything that involves taxing stuff is likely to send this bill, I guess, the legislature into Ways and Means, which is, we were advised, is hazardous.
The slow road, at least.
Well, it could be. It
Yeah.
could be hazard. I don't know. They worry about something. Anyway, local option and other revenues, rather than specifying and prescriptively with percent and all of the stuff that is in here, we simply said the town may vote to enact a local option tax and any other taxes or local source revenues that might be enabled for the town by state statute, in the hopes that someday Middlebury, together with other regional centers, can persuade the legislature to enable us to vote on a second local option cent to keep the pressure off the property tax. That way we wouldn't have to amend the charter when, if it's ever can be imagined, the state would enable towns to get money from other sources, but that's the idea, not to avoid the need to have more charter changes for specific things in the future.
And good news, the Senate did accept the White Amendment eventually, such that if there is a certain threshold balance in the pilot fund, the amount retained by the state drops to 20% in future years.
Yeah.
So we'll get 80% of our local options tax revenue.
Yeah, so that D here, so you see how that 70% figure in there, and now
Right.
it's going to increase. So another
Yeah.
good reason to cut out.
Already 75 and hopefully going to 80.
Investments, the town staff and finance department saw no need to change these numbers, which was amazing to me, because all the numbers have increased since 1960. Anyway, general provisions.
Good old severability.
Yeah, the severability. Pending matters. Fire District Number 1 still exists as a separate entity that we would require a vote of both of them to merge. So apropos to the water system report you heard earlier, it's always been there, but politically hard to imagine that coming together. Merging municipalities is never an easy thing.
Right.
It's amazing that the town and village even merged in Middlebury in an earlier era. The rest of this, copies of the charter.
Back to our publication.
Self-explanatory.
changes.
No need to have the secretary, yes, incorporate District Number 4 stuff. References to state statute are basically the same, just word processed, and that is it.
Yeah,
Nice work.
It's beautiful.
That's a lot of work for us.
Well, okay, so I think we're almost at the end of the time we've had anyway, so we are past it.
Yeah, it's all right.
So the next steps would be for members to reflect on this, think about, this is an opportunity to put something in, and if you think asking for alternative tax classification or something modest like that.
Fred, if you want to share with us the Burlington Charter enabling language, that would be lovely.
I have only heard about it, actually.
Okay.
All
right, I will look into this.
The AI skills. You know. Find all charter provisions dealing with and zip. That would be a great service, Andy, if you could do that.
Okay, I will look for that and share it with us.
Any ideas you have that ought to be proposed either as part of this or as in parallel with it, while we're having the opportunity for a charter change. We had one person come in during our process.
You can say Ross Conrad.
Ross Conrad, who suggested that our charter should require business sales to be offered to the employees.
Right of first refusal to employees on business sales.
And we thought this was a little out of our lane.
Great idea.
Traditionally, we may in the public hearing process get other ideas like that to come forward. And we could, if we think they have merit, use your discretion to put them into the category of, okay, we'll vote on this as a separate question.
Yeah.
Yes or no. And not derail all of the other good housekeeping.
I can't see the legislature, grappling with that in
we
next
might
May.
say that as a parallel question.
Yeah.
Should the town ask the legislature to enable regional centers like Middlebury to vote on a second cent local option tax? Yes or no?
Sure.
Instead of putting it in the mouth,
in the text,
you could get a sense of that. We could go to the legislature and say, okay, this is a strong sentiment for this about it. So that's an idea. Anyway, so at some future meeting with the
soonish, we have to
space for this, but relatively soon, if we could gather up whatever new ideas there are, circle back through the things we flagged in one or two places here, and then establish a schedule. There's a proposed schedule in the package that you have. We're ahead of that right now. We were going to have a third meeting just to get through this, but I plowed through it more quickly.
Boom.
So we're and hearing that the town clerk favors the general election, that gives us even a little more time. So the hearings don't have to necessarily be in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
I know the first one on a date is and then happens to be the night of the festival in Green, something or Zydeco. So I thought, oh boy.
Yeah.
That's not great night for a hearing. We lose all the Zydeco.
We'd be really skewed if we lost the important yeah, I love Zydeco. What am I saying?
So that's it, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
All right, let me get back to my agenda. Because it's time for the Town Emergency Management Director reappointment.
Yay!
Well, he showed up for it.
And he's here.
I didn't campaign for this.
That's why I wanted you should have hidden.
Are you interested in being the town health officer?
Interested, that's a strong word.
Thank you for actually asking. Nobody usually asks.
Oh man. All right. Each year, the town of Middlebury appoints a town emergency management director as required by state law. The town's police chief has historically served in this role. Chief Jason Covey serving as the current director. We adopted the local emergency management plan in our April 14th meeting. Jason's here before us if we have questions of our current emergency management director. Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to reappoint Police Chief Jason Covey as the Town of Middlebury's Emergency Management Director for a one-year term.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, or praise?
Praise, yes.
That's
Good
a praise.
job. Thank you.
I'm here for it. This is the best part. I didn't know it was on the agenda.
Oh, very good. All in favor of the reappointment of Chief Covey to the Town Emergency Management Director, please indicate aye.
Aye.
There it is.
Yay.
Well done.
Next year you should campaign a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'll get signs.
All right, and we are only 5 minutes behind. Memorial Sports Center Commission appointment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3-member board. We have an application from Jason LaRock.
That's a no-brainer, right?
That's a no-brainer.
I move to appoint Jason LaRock as the Middlebury Sports Center Commission member for a 2-year term.
Second.
Moved, seconded.
Just 2 years?
Questions, comments, praise?
We usually try to get 3 or 4 out of them.
We can do it again in 2 years. All in favor? Aye. Last on the hit list, town treasurer reappointment. Beth Dow has been doing this fantastically. Town charter changed it from election to appointed. That term ended in March.
So we're looking for another reappointment to a 3-year term.
Have we not had a town treasurer since March?
Just came to our attention.
She's been acting without proper appointment.
She's the lady that retired 8 years ago.
I know.
She's been retired for 8 years.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
All right. Entertain a motion.
I'll move to reappoint Beth Dow to the position of town treasurer to a 3-year term ending in May of 2029.
Moved. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We have an executive session coming up, so we're going to do select board member comments now. I'm gonna start over here. Farhan.
You're changing the whole thing.
Mix it up.
I have no concern. Just a question about, do we have a plan of when we are discussing this DAC matter? Do you have any?
No, but we will communicate it as those plans coalesce.
Okay, because there are people who are very passionate about this, so we should have it at the next meeting and take care of that if we really need to discuss this. Agree?
Agree.
I think there's there's 2 parts to this. There's you fill a vacancy, or you get into the whole policy issue. And I think personally that the policy question is something that should come through the zoning ordinance and through Alicia, and changes ought to be welcomed and considered. But in the meantime, just to render the board functionless when from time to time the DRB asks for their help seems to be. That's all. My only interest in it was so they have a quorum. So if you think withdrawing my name would make a difference, I would withdraw.
So my comment is, when people come to us and make a comment like as if we are trying to get rid of that committee, that was not the intent. The intent was to have a discussion about that committee being very understaffed, not meeting optimally or something. So we should have a discussion, and that's a valid thing to do. It's not like we are not dictating that we shouldn't have that committee. I don't think any one of us saying this.
It came up last time.
What?
That came up.
Yeah,
It's
we
understandable
talked
why
a
they
lot
thought
about that.
There are some people who feel that.
There's an interest here, so that's what the conversation is going to be about. I mean,
I didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But we already determined it would be next
It's coming up.
meeting.
Yeah, we did reach, I think at the last meeting, you asked us to reach out to Alicia to get her feedback and invite her into the conversation. So we have it on the May 26th draft agenda right now.
Good.
Got it.
So it's going.
Fred, going around for concerns. Do you have anything else? No. Danielle.
Only I had the opportunity to meet with, or they had asked me to meet with Melanie and Phil from.
I had someone.
Melanie Sands.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Regional planning.
Our RPC
Yes,
delegates.
regional planning, exactly. So, it's just adding to my list of things to learn about.
Your ever broadening understanding of the layers. Yeah.
But you know what was cool about it was they seem to be also adding to a different list of people who really are enthusiastic and wanting to be a part of positive, whether it's change or just positive direction for the town.
It's
and the region.
so good how many people are invested in bringing their energy and skills.
Yeah.
To improve the common space.
Super cool.
Megan.
I was very intrigued by the college students' presentation about the interactive budget tool that happened happening now, or happened an hour ago. So we didn't get to see it, and I'm curious if we can get access to that tool.
I think you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, Ethan, at the skate park event, I noted that the scheduling that was really unfortunate. If there's any way you could record that so we could watch their presentation or receive their recommendations. Conflicting time.
Reach out and see.
Great.
Neat.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Sweet.
You know how I love the dogs in our town, Guinness,
Well,
Tula, all of our dog public servants. Just making the announcement that we are taking nominations for next year's dog mayor.
Are they gonna have a cat secretary this year?
Don't know about cat secretary.
They're really.
Don't dismiss it like that. Come on.
It's a fundraiser, right?
Yeah.
So more people are going to
Maybe
pay
you
more
should
money
just
if their
submit your
cat's
cat
involved.
as secretary.
I need
Like
to know
maybe
the
just do it.
criteria. I don't think my dog made it.
I don't know. But you have until the 31st to submit a beautiful headshot with a slogan for your pet or a pet you love in town.
But these
How
pets
is the
need to
slogan
make
not
public
just
appearances, right?
he is a good boy?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Or she, because
Or
our
she
current mayor
is a good girl. Yeah, indeed.
You know,
Well, she makes public
Thanks, Izzy.
appearances, right? Like
yes, and she is the best.
That's why my dog is not a
My
pawn.
Not
dog's
sure.
couldn't do it, yeah.
Not sure if the vest will be transferred
Okay.
or
new
was-
vest.
or
Maybe
new
it retires.
vest.
Understood.
Yeah.
Daniel.
I have nothing.
Okay. I would like to just say that I thought that the town health officer was a honorific, and it turns out that there's actually substantial work involved the last 5 days at least. And I'm hoping that it lets up.
That's crazy.
Keep Dan healthy.
Keeping Dan healthy. That's exactly it. Trying to prevent him from bringing huntavirus into our town. Come on.
Exactly what I have.
So are you saying we need to recruit?
I think it would be great if there was someone other than me
Change the town
as the
charter.
du jour town health officer. I've had to go twice to the hospital to pick up my reports
I
and
think
track
Izzy
down
would be
vaccination
perfect.
information.
I think Izzy
and-
would be
So that
as
was a
compassionate
surprise
and
to
caring
you,
as she is.
right?
Yes.
So where would one learn about that other than it becoming a surprise?
David Sofrin provided me with a lovely several-page
The role
document.
itself or the.
Well, I'm just curious, like if somebody was thinking about becoming chair of the select board, like where they might see that as like
Well, that's a closely
whether or
guarded
not that
secret.
would
You
influence
you can't find anything.
their desire to do it.
Becomes the chair is the default health officer when a health officer or deputy are not available. So in our instance, we had sort of bad timing. Tom Scanlon had retired from the role of health officer, and then we began the hiring replacement process. The deputy who we had appointed stepped back from the role, so we sort of lost both individual roles within a few weeks.
So that's the default.
So
Right.
the default.
Oh, so
Ta-da.
it isn't just like okay, you're a chair
No,
now, you're this.
one of
Got
them
it.
becomes
Now,
on.
it's also the case that if a town does not nominate someone for the solid waste district, the chair of the select board is their delegate.
Wow.
Those people usually do not show up for solid waste district meetings, but they have it such that you cannot not nominate a delegate. Instead, it falls upon the chair.
That would be good, right?
Good times.
Yeah.
We have executive session to attend to.
All right.
Any motion?
Do it.
I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding the negotiation of two contracts would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage, because the discussion will divulge the town's position on the contract provisions to be negotiated. I move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also move to enter into executive session with the inclusion of town manager, assistant town manager, and the director of administration.
And police chief.
And the police chief, Chief Covey, to discuss the negotiation of two contracts as allowed under Title 1, Section 313A1A.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are in executive.
not to exceed total of $96,606 for IT vendor services.
93.
What? 93,606, excuse me, thank you.
All right.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate. Aye. Very good. Our work here is done.
Yay, motion to adjourn. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor. Aye. Good night, guys.